Accutron Watches present. From New York City, this is the Accutron Show, a time travel through American culture with your hosts, Bill McCuddy, Scott Alexander, and David Graver. Visit AccutronWatch.com and discover the brand that has made American history with an all-new proprietary next-generation electrostatic energy movement. Accutron. It's not a timepiece, it's a conversation piece.
You know, when I got married in 2013, my dad gave me a watch that his mother-in-law, you know, my mother's mother, who I never met, she died before I was born, and then she gave my dad a watch on the day he got married, and it was an Accutron watch.
The person you heard at the top of the show is today's guest. He's Brooklyn-based artist Michael Kagan, and he's here to talk about his work and collaborations with the music and fashion industry. He's also kind of out there, kind of out in space. First up, me, Bill McCuddy, out in space, along with Scott Alexander and editor David Graver, here to talk in a brand new episode of the Accutron Show. Stay tuned. Michael joins us right after this. This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Accutron is proud to bring back the 1968 T version of the iconic Astronaut model, featuring a distinctive day-night bezel and limited to 300 timepieces. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, to learn more. Today we're going to a place in outer space called Brooklyn, and we're going to meet an artist who has made a name or a career for himself, painting lots of different things, but primarily astronauts and going into space. A friend of yours, Michael Kagan.
Indeed. I think actually one of the most important attributes about Michael's work is that you can easily point it out in a gallery or an art show. His thick, expressive lines and his subject matter, these race cars or astronauts, it's so detectable. You're like, that is a Michael Kagan. That is a Michael Kagan. And you can to easily understand his work makes you sort of love his work.
Is it kind of photorealistic? Is it?
Its inspiration is photorealism, but he gets impressionistic with it. He leans into his own style.
I wonder what he thinks of all the new technology that's influencing a great many artists. We'll ask him about that because he's dealing with tech, and I wonder too if.
We're also dealing with space. We love space.
We do love space.
Right? It's the Accutron Show. We put things in the space.
Did you draw astronauts as a kid?
I definitely drew astronauts. Oh, my God. All I wanted to do was go to space. This is before I found out that space is super boring and super wants to kill you.
Very quiet.
Space wants to kill you. And no one can hear you scream.
No one can hear you scream and all those things. No, but like the romantic idea of space for a kid is like going to this frontier and then like there's going to be aliens and there's going to be these beautiful green ladies and things like this, and you're like, I will be the one to kiss her for science. Like
I never thought that.
You've seen way too many Star Trek.
Never thought that.
But then you know the reality of it is that it is difficult and dangerous, and I think that's actually a little bit like the art world. It's like you romanticize the idea of like, oh, I want to be an artist, and like, sure you do. You want to live by your creative work. Well, you know what? It's difficult to do, and it's a high wire act, and you are living on the edge when you're doing that. So I have incredible respect for anybody who
He's got some famous collecting friends that are big fans of his work.
And
some of them
with Pharrell.
And Pharrell has
who?
Pharrell. You know, the happy guy.
Madonna who?
Yes, he hobnobs with famous people, and today he's talking to the likes of us.
It's also an appropriate episode because of the fact that Accutron has the astronaut watch coming out, which throws back to the watch they released in 1962, that Bulova released in 1962, that was sort of destined for space, but ended up as a huge commercial success.
Every now and then we become a huge commercial as well, and this just happens to tie in perfectly with him, and we'll ask him about anything he knows about space watches. Michael Kagan is an artist, and he joins us from Brooklyn in just a moment on the Accutron Show. Don't go away.
This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, and discover our Accutron DNA collection. Reimagined for a new generation, the Accutron DNA combines breakthrough technology, precise engineering, and modern aesthetics to achieve a new level of technical excellence. The Accutron DNA, the new face of time for those who blaze new trails.
Michael Kagan, welcome to the Accutron Show. We're thrilled to talk to you because I think we discussed at the top of the show, we all drew astronauts as kids and never figured out how to make any money. what was the turning point for you?
Well, I mean, you know, what's funny is, I'll kind of go backwards, but, you know, when I started doing astronaut paintings, and it was kind of for what was going to be my first show in New York City, and this was probably like 2010 maybe, my dad said to me, he's like, who the hell's going to buy astronaut paintings? And then, and from there, that's kind of how I created a name for myself in the art world, was with these astronaut paintings. And, I was always into space growing up. I went to space camp, actually with my dad. I went to space camp and I, did rocket model launches and stuff like that. And I knew the history about it. And then, I after grad school, I had a residency. And then I was doing all different types of painting, but I really like to use like this like thick kind of expressive brush mark. So, when I finally had a studio to myself and I was just like, okay, what do I want to paint for myself? Like, what would I want to hang up on my wall if I kept my paintings? What do I enjoy? And so I started doing these astronaut paintings because I felt like I was like worthy of it because I knew the history so well. And I didn't feel like I was just doing it because it was trendy or because I thought it looked cool. I felt like, okay, I know the history of it. I grew up learning a lot about it. So I'm going to do 1, I'm going to do 2, I'm going to do 3. And then, I was trained at, representational painting. I went to grad school at New York Academy of Art. So I knew human anatomy and I knew how to paint representational imagery. So, it was kind of just like, I always say when I lecture at different grad schools and stuff, it's like when you get dressed or someone's style or anything else, like if you force it, it will be obvious. If you kind of just let it naturally happen, then and it seems genuine, then it always works out, I think, for the best. So it's just kind of like all the pieces were there, and I started doing these astronaut paintings, and and then here I am today.
Michael, you touched upon something that I find very intriguing, these expressive brushstrokes that sort of define your style. How did you develop this signature style of yours? It's
just the way I paint from photographs, a lot of historical photographs, and it's just the way that I break things up. And, I think I secretly want to be an abstract painter, but, if you cut a little section out of one of my paintings, it would look like a little abstract painting, but it's all these brush marks that kind of work together in like a jigsaw type of puzzle to form, when you see it from 5-6 feet away, it looks like a photographic image. And as you walk up closer, it really falls apart. And it's like the same thing I was saying just now about style. It's just the way I paint, and I'm not trying to paint that way. I can't paint really tight and like super tight. It's just kind of the way that it just happens. And with my more recent paintings, I find I'm painting with a lot tighter, more still a flurry of brushstrokes, but a little bit tighter. So it actually gets more photographic, the image, and more a little bit more information. But I made some paintings over the summer. They were a little looser. So I feel like it's just kind of like whatever happens. You kind of, oil painting's tricky. You kind of have to just kind of like, you're at its mercy a little bit. You can control it up to a point, which is kind of the beauty of oil paint. So yeah, it's always
You're
kind
in
of
good company because this is the same thing. You get too close to it and it falls apart.
Yeah. Well, like anything, if you overdo it, it's gonna get too overdone.
So Michael, you clearly have been interested in space for a very long time. What is it about space travel and exploration that interests you?
I like a lot of the imagery. Like I bounced around with my space imagery for a while, and then for the most part with the astronaut paintings I've been doing, that's been more the Apollo imagery because it's so like iconic. It's so classic. A lot of these guys, especially when they were on the moon, they had the big Hasselblad cameras on their chest. They knew they were being photographed. And it was so new to everyone in the world that it was kind of like this, like, kind of like hero, kind of like this stance. And I kind of like this, I like the kind of like, I've done big paintings of Everest and of like the Death Zone Mountains. And I've done some paintings of big wave surfing. And I kind of all like this kind of like, these kind of like aha moments, but it's like for a split second. And at the end of the day, like these guys on the moon, they're just, there's no audience. The audience is from the photo or watching on TV, but they're there on their own. And it's kind of like, it's these like death-defying moments. And then, and with my paintings too, I'm trying not to, I enjoy seeing narrative painting. Like one of my favorite painters is Eric Fischl, but I really try to stay away from it when I paint. I like big snapshots. So even like my big mountain paintings, if you were in a crowded room and you saw my painting in the distance, you would just be like, and you just glance over someone's shoulder, it'd be like, boom, that's a mountain. Same for the astronauts. Boom, that's an astronaut. Central figure just standing there, not too much background information. And, I've done big paintings of cockpits. And the cool thing is like, some of my collectors are big tech guys. Some are just art collectors and painting collectors. And, some people love them for the brushworks. Some of them just like them because of the imagery. And some actually know the history behind the image and really geek out on that. Like I had a big mountain climber that has climbed like K2 and Everest in my studio. And he was looking at this this painting I did of K2 was super abstract. And he's like, that's where I camped out on base camp, right on that ledge. And that ledge was just like a squeegee brush mark. But the way I was abstracting it, he knew that point on the mountain, but it was just a flurry of brush marks. And then the same thing, like I've done these big cockpit paintings, and I've had guys from SpaceX and Virgin Galactic in the studio, and the same thing. They're like, "Oh, we love that cockpit," because they're pointing out specifics, and it's pretty cool when I'm just like, painting these abstract brush marks, and it's all coming together. And I know what a lot of stuff is, but it's kind of like I'm always learning more and more.
So, for the record, you think we've been to the moon?
I mean, I have. It's funny. I have some. I'm not gonna name drop because I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But I have some collectors that they're like conspiracy theorists, and they're like, I don't think, and they have some of my best astronaut works, but they're like, I don't think we've been there.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. I mean, the other thing that's really interesting about a lot of the guys who walked on the moon I saw in a documentary is that they came back and they became painters.
Yeah. Alan Bean, who I have to see if I can tilt this up a little bit. It's this small painting I'm making for Freeze LA, and he became quite the painter when he got, and his paintings are great. Which is cool because he's painting from his experience. And then I'm good friends with a retired astronaut, Leland Melvin, who's become a close friend of mine. And he's he'd be someone great to have on your show. But he's a big photographer, and he shoots from space and he shoots here, and it's pretty interesting. And his photography changed a lot since he's been in space, just the way he views shooting stuff here as well.
Sure.
Michael, you started to talk about something that I find very fascinating, having followed your career for more than a decade now. You have amassed collectors. I began seeing small shows of yours, and then I've seen you in art fairs around the country. How did you emerge as an artist? How did you build a collector base? And how did you end up with such solid gallery representation?
I mean, I like to think that I've gone like slow and steady. Like I'm in this, when I talk to different dealers or collectors, like I'm in this for the long game. So I've tried to make very careful decisions. And, I moved to New York right out of grad school in 2003. And I went to grad school and I was like, okay, I'm a painter. What do I want to do? I want to go to grad school because, that's the next step. And then from there I thought, okay, I'm going to teach painting because I'm going to get my master's in art. And then, I had professors like, I had Will Cotton. I was really fortunate enough to work with like Fischl and Jenny Seville. And then, I'm seeing some of these studios and some of these shows, and I'm going to Chelsea, and the center of the art world is here. So you're seeing all these shows, and I'm like, no. I just want to, I want to be a showing artist. So, it kind of snowballed. It's like, it's like when you don't see someone for a while, it's like if you see someone every day and they're like, they slowly change their appearance, you're not going to realize right away. So I went like really slowly with it. I had one or two paintings in some group shows that did well. I kept on working. I had some paintings, and then finally I got offered a solo show, and it did well. I was kind of asked to do the solo show knowing that Mark Parker from Nike was interested in my work. Like anything in the art world, you're just like, you're hedging your bet. So like Mark Parker was sort of interested in my work. I made my first large scale astronaut painting, my first full scale astronaut painting. He bought it.
You put a little swish on the.
Yeah. No, I mean, he bought it for his boot. He bought it for his collection. I went in and met with him. That was my first like major sale into like to a major collector. I was asked to do another solo show, and I was doing this huge painting of the Mercury 7 astronauts, and it felt like a really ambitious painting. Like to get it out of the studio where I was working, they had to take the hinges off the door, and they had to take the hinges off the door to the gallery. And I knew this was going to be like this epic logistical nightmare just to get the painting in the gallery. So like halfway, the painting was also very challenging for me because it's these 7, that famous picture of the Mercury 7 astronauts. It's 7 portraits more or less, and I'm not a portrait painter. And then everyone knows that photo, so you have to give it the likeness of each astronaut. So you're working with like 7 different faces, and if you mess one up, the painting doesn't work. So you have these like 7 epic challenges, and I always say paint to your strengths, and this was not to my strengths. So I'm working on this painting, and like halfway through, I'm like, I'm going to abandon this. And then I told the gallery, and the gallery was like, listen, we didn't want to tell you, but there's this Japanese collector that he knows about that you're making this painting, and if you finish it, he's pretty much first in line. There's no guarantees in life, but I think he would buy it. So I'm like, ooh, this is my moment. So I pull these all-nighters in the studio. I finish the painting. I actually finished the painting in the gallery because they couldn't move it in with wet edges. So I had to finish the background like the day before the show. I mean, I would never try anything like that now. I mean, look back that I would do these things. It's nuts. So then I finished the painting, and it's like, I finished. And then like a week goes by and nothing. 2 weeks go by and nothing. And then this Japanese collector who's Yuza Kamizawa, who's the one that bought all the seats on the SpaceX rocket. He comes in like full entourage, and he bought the painting for his collection. Commissioned me to do another astronaut painting. So, I mean, the reason I'm telling these stories about Mark Parker and Mizawa, I mean, I was very fortunate early on to have very good collectors support my career. And I think that gave other galleries and other collectors confidence to give me the next show. And I was also very careful. I've always been careful how I plan my shows and how I and the imagery I paint. And I try to, I don't paint extremely fast. I don't paint slow. I don't paint fast, but there's not like an overflow of painting. So like I have no available work right now except what I'm working on and what's up for the next show. So there's a little bit of supply and demand. And then, my, it kind of led to that where I've, the Andy Hall collection, bought some of my work. All this kind of, I had my first museum show in 2019. And all my big collectors loaned work back, which is kind of like, it's like when you have a wedding or like, you have a big moment in your life, like who's going to come, who's going to come to that event. And I was just like, wow, I really built up a really nice group of supportive collectors.
Look at this room.
And that they all loaned my work back, and it was the best of the best work. And then I was seeing the catalog, and it was all from this great group of collectors. So it was kind of nice that, sometimes you can't get work back. Sometimes you lose track of where it is. So I had my museum show, and then, to back up a little bit, I had, after my first solo show, Pharrell Williams, who is from this Virginia Beach where I was born, he reached out and he wanted to do a collaboration. So, I've done a lot of collaborations that are kind of like either fashion or, outside of the traditional painting world that I really enjoyed.
And Pharrell wasn't a space image, right? That was something.
No, the first time we did space imagery. We did a couple different paintings on different clothes. It did really well.
So with Pharrell, it was the space imagery, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for he has a brand called Billionaire Club, and we did a capsule collection, and then we did a second one. He wrote the foreword for my museum catalog. I'm kind of rambling, but I feel like it's always been these like careful decisions. That support my big picture goals. And like, I've always had a pretty good, idea of where I want my career to head and what kind of painter I want to be. And I've always made sure, I've gotten out of some different relationships in the professional relationships because I felt like I wasn't going to move my career in the right direction. And then I've made sure I've surrounded myself with both collectors and dealers that have the same big picture I do, work and put me on the trajectory that I'm shooting for. And then, I've lived in New York for 20 years. I would say like I've always been a painter, but I feel like as far as like really showing, it's probably been 10 years. So I feel like it's kind of early, but it's also, I'm 42. So I feel like every decision needs to be careful. And then, the art world moves fast, but it's like, I was going over my schedule with the 2 different galleries I work with, and like, we're talking about 2026 already. and stuff is laid out till then, and then I'm looking at the canvases. Okay, this needs to be done. This needs to be done here. So I like it. It's enjoyable. I like that I'm like in the studio by myself making work. I'm responsible for what gets out there. I've been doing some sculptures, but my sculptures are made in Spain. But as far as painting goes, I'm the only one touching the canvas. I have no assistants working on the paintings.
So much of your work feels like it has to do with the edges of things, going to space, the frontiers, being on the big waves, being out there sort of at the edge of creation in a certain way. Is there anything you do to keep yourself in that sort of edge space, in that creative ferment?
I mean, as far as like painting goes, like, my brushstrokes are very abstract. They're very like deliberate. So I try, I have this like kind of rule in my head, like you don't double back. So like, I'm not going to start like fussing around too much with an area. Like I lay down a stroke, I'll pull a stroke through it, and I'll keep like, if it's like a nozzle on a astronaut suit, I'll start building up the strokes to do that. But I'm not going to like scrape it out and start again. I'm just trying to like use these deliberate strokes to pull through. And because I feel like, I've had some really just like days where I feel off in the studio, but I'm still laying down those strokes. And I've had some days where I feel like every brush stroke I do is fire and I'm just like on a roll. And especially on some of these bigger paintings, you can't just paint every day where you think it's going to work out. You just have to paint every day. But I like that it all kind of works together, good and bad.
No going back.
No going back on the canvas. So yeah, with these paintings, I'm working on these areas and, I'm not thinking about like the area I painted yesterday or the area I'm going to work on tomorrow. I'm just trying to like weave in these strokes. And really with this like confidence, I use these flat brushes. I'm just trying to do like boom, boom, boom with these like movements. I make sure I stand up when I paint. And then, but back to that 100-foot wave documentary, he's going down the face of the wave and he's just like, when you're going down, you can't think about like, the past, the future. You're just like this like moment you're in. And I really try to, it's hard to get there painting. Some days are easier than others, but I really try to get in this, it's like anything you do. It's like running. It's like playing sports. You're really trying to get to this moment where you're thinking and not thinking, you're not overthinking. You're just kind of like in the moment, in the present. Maybe that's going to be my life's work. David knows my wife, but, she's into yoga. She's a designer and she's been, kind of like helping me try to get there with some, different ideas. But trying to be just present in life, you need to really be present when you paint too. And I want to be, with these brush strokes, but then I feel like, the same thing. Maybe that's a different idea I never even thought of until I was just talking to you guys with the, these astronauts and stuff like that. It's like, they have these like split second moments and, to be present in that moment is like next level.
Yeah. We are appreciating that you are present with us. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to learn about the gallery world. Does that still even exist? I can't believe everything isn't handled over some kind of a...
it's all on Zoom.
It's trying to be anyway. Michael Kagan, more with him after this break in the Accutron Show.
This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, and discover our legacy collection, reviving some of the most memorable Accutron watches from the 60s and 70s. The legacy collection combines timeless design with the technical excellence of Swiss watchmaking, each limited to 600 individually numbered pieces. The Accutron Legacy Collection, inspired by the past, built for the future.
Welcome back to the Accutron Show. If you're an aspiring artist, I hope you're taking notes because Michael Kagan is telling us all about what he does, right down to the strokes, how his own gallery became unhinged at one time, and basically what inspires him. So welcome back, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael, you take a lot of inspiration from technology. How do you feel about technology's influence on art, specifically with these AI programs that are generating visuals?
As far as making art, I think you should use the technology that you have at your disposal. So, as far as my own practice, I project my images when I lay them out, because it makes things faster. I'm really, really good at Photoshop, so I Photoshop my own reference images. I'll change colors around, I'll change the background, I'll edit things out, put things in. And then, I've been doing sculpture now for about 2 years, and with the sculpture, it's really fun because, I'm working with 3D designers who work in my studio part-time, and then we're doing 3D printed maquettes, and then we're doing large-scale 3D prints, and then we're casting from the 3D prints, and we're using some very high-tech, fun stuff. We're laser cutting stone, we're doing really neat stuff. So I feel like, you got it with anything that you do, you should use the technology at your disposal.
But do you feel like something like Midjourney and these machines that are making art based on prompts, are they interfering in the artist process?
I don't think so, because I feel like at the end of the day, like anything of quality will float to the surface, and then we'll rise above. Two of my collectors are the Winklevoss twins, and I was the first on their NFT platform, Nifty Gateway. So I know I was doing NFTs when no one even knew what they were, and then this was like 2018, and then I think I did my third release with Nifty Gateway when NFTs had become really all over the news and everything. And, people were kind of saying, oh, you're going to jump into that now. I was like, I've been doing this for years. And then, and the same thing with NFTs, I think, anything of quality will rise to the top, So I feel like it's with anything else, with painting, with anything. So, yeah. Rise to the top and also persevere and keep on going.
We're trying, brother. I got more questions. Calm down.
Well, what about the traditional gallery model, as we were alluding to?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about how you did it, how you started, how you went to the galleries. You were thinking of teaching, and then you said, no, this is what I want to do. And
then started making NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, how is it for somebody just starting out today? Do they still get seen in galleries first, or are they getting exposure in some digital format?
I mean, I think Instagram helps because it's purely visual. So what better way to scroll and see tons of work or openings or tag people or get people's attention? Instagram is kind of a fun tool. I mean, I always like the gallery world. I like, during the pandemic, most shows were online, virtual, rooms to see. A lot of sales happened over PDF, which they still do. But I still think there's something classic and amazing about hanging that painting. The painting, I always say, has 3 different lives. It has in the studio, and then in the gallery, and then wherever it goes from there to the collection. And I feel like that gallery hang and that install is so important. I mean, that's when you can really make work communicate with different pieces, and someone can stand in that room and see it, and it's hanging in front of them on a clean white wall, perfectly lit. I feel like some artists make it selling out of their studio, and that's exciting for them. Some artists just do commission-based work, and that's great. Some do more, installations, public installations, different types of things, and that's great. I mean, I don't think there is a wrong art world. It's just, it depends what, is for them. For me, the gallery world is where I want to show my paintings. It's one of the I love New York City. I'm never leaving. I think New York City is I wouldn't say it's the center of the art world, but it's definitely one of them. I think there's other cities that can closely compete, but gallery world's special. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, and it's, and I feel like it's as big as it is, it's also a small group too. Everyone knows each other. I mean, David's pretty well versed in it. I mean, he knows a lot of the same people I know just from the art world, and it's a big place. And I think for the most part, it's actually surprisingly pretty friendly place. I feel like there's other industries that are more cutthroat, and I'm not saying the art world isn't, but I feel like,
well, there's it's a snake pit to a certain extent if there's an unscrupulous gallery owner who's trying to build somebody up and pumping and dumping. But
I mean, there's all different types of move. I mean, as much as I love painting, I also love the business aspect of it. I do like that a lot, and I like working with dealers, and I like the 2 galleries I'm working with now a lot because I think we have the same vision and the same game plan. But yeah, I feel like, I feel like if you want to be part of the gallery world as an artist and you really want to go for it, I feel like you just go for it, and you learn about it, you educate yourself about it. And I mean, New York Academy, where I went, I feel like when I graduated in 2005, from a class of 60, every year there were probably 2 or 3 people that would show at galleries. Now I feel that number's gone up. I mean, I still see some amazing artists from New York Academy that are really like hitting it right out of the gate, going to some major galleries. So I feel like it's just like putting yourself in the right city in the right way. It's just, a handful of stuff.
So it sounds like you do think the gallery model will persevere over time.
Always.
Time. Get it? Time. It's a show about watches. It's the Accutron Show. You mentioned earlier off the air that you have a connection to Accutron, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Could you talk a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it. I actually thought about it the other day because, when I got married in 2013, my dad gave me a watch that his mother-in-law, my mother's mother, who I never met, she died before I was born. And then she gave my dad a watch on the day he got married, and it was an Accutron watch. And he gave me that watch the day I got married. And it's like a gold Accutron watch. It has that classic kind of square kind of rounded edge shape. And I still, and I have like, I wear some more bigger watches, not big, but more like, like steel banded bracelets and stuff. It's not, it's this classic gold watch on a black leather band, but that's like my, that's like my tuxedo dress watch that I wear.
Well, we have an astronaut watch coming out. We talked about it at the top of this episode, so we'll have to we'll send you a picture of that. No, we'll maybe have to get you one of those. It's great. It's great when those things kind of cross over, and I'm a big collector of the older pieces myself, and they're really cool. And I think the space connection makes it perfect for you. What are you working on next? What's in the gallery now that you can tell us a little bit about, or what's on the easel?
I just had two big works at Art Basel in Miami. It was the first painting that I showed. I started to work with the Gallery Venus over Manhattan, and they have 2 spaces in New York City. And my next solo show will be with Venus in May. And that show is actually going to be all Formula One paintings. And I've dabbled in Formula One. I've done some Formula One paintings here and there. And my first full-scale race car driver, which was Verstappen, was in Basel, Miami with Venus. And then in May, that will be my first solo. It will actually be my first solo show in New York. I think I haven't done a solo show in New York in about 5 years on purpose. I kind of wanted to I've done Japan, I've done Hong Kong, Brussels. I just had a big show in London, and then I wanted to wait till I found a good fit in New York. And the owner, Adam Lindman, and I have become good friends. And then and Venus is, I feel like, a really good fit.
Scott's right. You're always on the edge. You're never going to do a bowl of fruit, are you?
No bowls of fruits. No flowers.
Bowls of fruit aren't at risk of flying into a barrier or losing their oxygen.
Maybe a pear next to the moon. Maybe a tangerine.
My girls always request Barbies. They're like, paint me a Barbie. No Barbies. But yeah.
Listen, we are thrilled that you're a fan of Accutron, that you enjoy the world of space, that you're exposing people to it with your work, that you're a working artist in New York. You're not leaving this city, and that's encouraging as well. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today on the Accutron Show. We will continue to watch for your work, and we will hope that you'll look for ours too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much.
Michael.
Thank you for listening to The Accutron Show. To listen to all of our shows, visit accutronwatch.com. To learn more about the world of Accutron, follow us on Instagram at AccutronWatch and subscribe to our podcast. From New York City, until next time, Accutron Time.